Commander, let's light the sky. Training sharper drone pilots, learning how to fly. Mission ready mindset, safety leading every plan. Skills that build confidence from takeoff through the scan. Tune in at Sky Commander, come join the crew today. Learning smart, fly with purpose, level up your way. We see more, no sooner, that's the edge we're here to spread. See above, go beyond, get ahead.
Okay, let's get started.
You, the learner, know exactly what it feels like to walk into a truly premium hotel.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole experience.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you don't even need to see the logo embroidered on the bathrobes or, the gold lettering above the reception desk to know you are standing somewhere expensive.
Yeah, you just feel it.
You feel it immediately in your nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the ambient cedarwood scent they deliberately pump into the lobby.
Oh, the scent is always a dead giveaway.
Exactly. Or it's the exact warm, like 2,700 Kelvin temperature of the recessed lighting.
Very specific, but yeah, that matters.
It really does. And it's the way the heavy oak door to your room shuts with this deeply satisfying, completely muffled click.
That click is everything.
It is. You don't consciously analyze these things, but taken together, they form a complete invisible system.
Right.
And that system is whispering directly to your brain instantly and without words, like, we have everything under control. You are safe here.
And, that is entirely by design. What you are experiencing there isn't just interior decoration or architecture.
What is it then?
It is applied environmental psychology.
Huh.
Yeah, when you hear that heavy door click, you are physically feeling the weight of their operating standards before you ever speak a single word to the concierge.
That makes so much sense.
Every single sensory detail is a calculated signal of governance. It proves they're paying attention to the invisible things, which, makes you trust them with the visible things.
But then, okay, think about how most businesses present themselves visually in the digital wild.
Oh, it's usually a mess.
Right. I'm talking specifically about highly technical, specialized fields, like engineering firms, drone operators, commercial inspectors.
And the contrast is stark.
You click on their website or watch their promo video, and that heavy, muffled click of the oak door is completely gone.
Oh, totally gone.
Instead, the digital front door is like squeaking off its hinges. The metaphorical lighting is flickering between 3 different clashing color temperatures.
And the lobby music is just some chaotic, algorithmic playlist stuck on shuffle.
Yes, exactly.
And the psychological result of that is cognitive whiplash.
Whiplash, yeah.
The buyer might not be a video editor or a branding expert, right? But human beings are exquisitely tuned pattern recognition machines.
We notice when things are off.
Exactly. When the visual pattern breaks, it triggers a subtle alarm bell. It feels erratic.
And that erratic feeling has a cost, right?
An incredibly expensive cost. We are talking about the silent loss of trust, the evaporation of pricing power, and the total surrender of authority in your market.
Wow. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to cut straight through that noise and show you how these invisible signals actually work.
Okay, they really do work.
They do. Today's stack of sources isn't just some basic tutorial on making pretty videos or taking nice photos.
No, not at all.
It is an absolute masterclass in how your visual identity translates directly into pure, hard business leverage.
That's the key right there. Business leverage.
We are unpacking a comprehensive internal playbook originally designed for an aerial intelligence and drone company called Sky Commander.
Great company.
But I want to be very clear to you listening. You do not need to own a drone for this to change your business.
No, definitely not.
Because the lessons we are about to extract apply to absolutely anyone trying to build a premium, instantly recognizable brand in a deeply crowded world.
The industry really doesn't matter, whether you're flying sensors over critical infrastructure or presenting highly sensitive pitch decks to venture capitalists or running a boutique consulting firm.
The mechanics are the same.
The underlying mechanical gears of visual trust turn the exact same way.
I love that.
We're going to look at the architecture of how you prove your absolute competence to a client before they even open your proposal document.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Because right out of the gate, the playbook introduces a massive core premise that completely shatters conventional wisdom.
It really flips things on its head.
It does. Most people, when they hear the phrase brand consistency, their brain immediately autofills the word sameness.
Right, the exact same everything.
Yeah, they think consistency means you have to use the exact same rigid template, the exact same hex codes, and the exact same monotonous pacing for every single piece of content you ever release into the world.
Which is a trap that creates incredibly boring, highly ineffective companies.
Wait, so sameness is bad?
Sameness is terrible. Strong brands do not do sameness. In fact, if you look closely, sameness is very often just creative laziness masquerading as operational discipline.
Wow. Laziness masquerading as discipline. That's a strong way to put it.
It's someone saying, I don't want to think about the context, so I'll just apply a single filter to everything.
So what do the premium brands do instead?
What truly premium brands actually build is a system of recognizable variation.
Recognizable variation. I want to linger on that for a second because it means your brand has the exact same foundational DNA, but it exhibits totally different behavior depending on the environment it finds itself in. The sources use this brilliant mechanical analogy to explain this, comparing a brand to a master aviator.
It's such a good analogy.
Right. Think about a top-tier helicopter pilot. That pilot does not fly the aircraft the exact same way when they are executing a tight, highly technical inspection past 3 feet from a bridge pylon as they do when they are filming a sweeping, high-altitude cinematic reveal of a mountain range.
The context is completely different.
The pilot fundamentally adapts to the environment, the weather, and the objective. But, and I think this is the crucial part, if you are sitting in the passenger seat, that pilot still feels like the same operator.
Yeah, because the physical output of the helicopter is entirely different in those two scenarios.
The speed, the altitude.
Right, the speed is different, the altitude is different, the inputs on the flight controls are different, but the underlying decision logic driving those inputs hasn't changed a millimeter.
It's the logic that matters.
Exactly. The rigorous discipline, the calm under immense pressure, the hierarchy of safety priorities, the conservative standard of judgment, those are the permanent constants.
So consistency isn't about repeating the exact same output like a photocopier.
No, it's about repeating the exact same standard of care across wildly different scenarios.
To really grasp how this plays out in reality, we need to look at how a brand behaves across what the playbook calls the 4 mission modes.
These are the core operational states.
Yeah, essentially the 4 different jobs your visual content is hired to do out in the world. Let's start with the one most people are obsessed with.
The marketing reel.
Yes. Marketing reel. This is the impress and attract mode.
Right. The commercial job of a marketing reel is purely about generating desire and shaping top-of-funnel perception.
So they have to look cool.
Because its primary function is attraction, the brand actually has permission to be much more energetic.
Okay.
The editing case can accelerate, the musical score can be more emotionally resonant, and you can lean heavily into your absolute best, most breathtaking hero visual.
You're trying to get a reaction.
You are trying to trigger a dopamine response in the viewer.
But here's where I see companies constantly derail themselves.
They go too far.
Way too far. They think that just because they are in marketing mode, they suddenly have a hall pass to abandon their entire brand identity and just mimic whatever aesthetic happens to be trending on social media that week.
Which is a huge mistake.
I've seen highly technical, serious engineering firms put out marketing reels that look like they're trying to sell an extreme sports energy drink.
It's so jarring.
You can be cinematic and impressive without putting on a Halloween costume and becoming a totally different company.
The whiplash there destroys credibility. Let's look at Sky Commander for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Their entire business model is built on providing clarity, delivering actionable intelligence, and exuding quiet confidence.
Quiet confidence, right?
If their marketing reel suddenly features hyperactive glitch transitions, heavy bass drop music, and erratic camera movements, it actively contradicts their core promise.
It makes them look chaotic.
Exactly. For a company like that, the marketing reel should feel clean, highly controlled, intelligent, and visually expansive.
Like wearing a suit.
Yes. Think of it as the absolute sharpest dress version of the brand. It's the company wearing a tailored tuxedo, but it is unequivocally the same person inside that suit.
That makes perfect sense. Which brings us to the second mode, and this requires a complete shift in gears.
This is where a lot of people struggle.
Right, it's the training content, the teach and support mode. Let me throw a scenario at you.
Sure.
If I just spent $10,000 developing this beautiful high-octane visual style for my marketing reel, it is incredibly tempting to apply that same glossy, fast-paced style to the internal training videos I make for my clients.
Of course it is. You want to use what you paid for.
But the text argues that doing so is actually destructive.
It is catastrophic for the viewer's ability to learn.
Catastrophic.
Yes, and this comes down to the mechanics of cognitive load theory.
Okay, break that down for me.
When a human being is trying to process new, complex information, their working memory is easily overwhelmed.
Sure.
They desperately need sequence logic, empty space to process the data, and stable, unchanging visual references.
So slow it down.
Exactly. Imagine you are trying to teach an entry-level technician how to identify a hairline microfracture on the edge of a wind turbine blade.
Okay.
If you use a dramatic, sweeping, cinematic camera movement to reveal that blade, while epic music swells in the background, you are actively sabotaging them.
Because it's too much.
The brain is processing the movement and the music instead of the microfracture.
You're basically forcing them to learn from a Michael Bay movie?
Precisely the problem. In teach and support mode, the pacing has to grind to a halt. The edit needs deep breaths.
It has to breathe.
The visual language must transition from performative to purely explanatory. You trade that dynamic, sweeping camera orbit for a dead static comparison shot.
And the lighting.
You trade the dramatic lighting for flat, even highly legible illumination.
And what's brilliant is that dialing back the flare isn't a betrayal of your brand.
Not at all.
It's proof of your brand's maturity. You are proving you understand that your job has shifted from attracting the client to supporting the client.
Which builds incredible trust.
But now, we hit the third mode, and this is where things get really tense. The inspection summary.
The ultimate truth test.
Yeah, the playbook calls this the analyze and clarify mode, and it describes this as the ultimate truth test for a technical brand. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If I'm delivering an inspection report on a critical piece of infrastructure, and my client is paying a massive premium for my services, shouldn't I color grade that footage to look as cinematic, moody, and epic as possible? Doesn't that justify my premium price tag?
That is perhaps the single most dangerous error a technical operator can make.
Really?
Yes. When a client is looking at an inspection summary, they are looking for hard, objective evidence. In that context, drama looks like distortion.
I want to highlight that phrase because it hit me like a ton of bricks when I read it. Drama looks like distortion.
Think about the physical mechanism of what happens when you try to make an image look cinematic.
Okay, like what do editors actually do?
Often, editors will push the contrast. They will do something called crushing the blacks.
Right, darkening the shadows.
This means they take the darkest shadows in the image and darken them further until they become pure pixel black voids, which gives the image a moody, stylized look.
It looks cool.
It looks very cool. But if you are inspecting the underside of a concrete bridge and you crush the blacks to make it look cool, the structural engineer looking at that footage is going to panic.
Oh, because they can't see the data.
They are going to ask, wait, is that pitch black line a critical structural defect, like a massive crack in the concrete, or did the editor just mess with the contrast?
You've just introduced doubt into a product that is literally sold as certainty.
You've entirely compromised the data. An inspection summary is not there to win a film festival award. It is there to communicate empirical findings.
What's the priority?
The supreme brand priority in this mode must be precision over perception. The camera movement sheds all artistic ambition and becomes ruthlessly mathematically functional.
And the color.
The color treatment strips away all mood and becomes painstakingly clean, neutral, and true to life. It's the brand putting on a lab coat. It's analyst mode.
Which feels like stepping onto a different planet when we compare it to the fourth and final mode.
Ah, yes. The social clip.
The hook and signal relevance mode.
Yeah.
The reality of social platforms is that they demand ruthless speed. They run on a compressed attention economy.
You have to be fast.
The trap here is that the algorithm exerts immense, invisible pressure on you to adopt a completely different, usually much louder personality.
We see this every day.
We've all seen this. You look at a B2B company's website and it's incredibly polished. Their white papers are peer-reviewed and highly technical. And then you click on their social media feed and it looks like a caffeinated teenager stole the CEO's phone.
And that disjointedness slowly erodes the foundation of trust.
It really does.
A client sees that and subconsciously wonders, who is actually running this ship? A social clip absolutely has permission to be much snappier.
Because it has to be.
Right. The mechanics of the platform dictate that the first 3 seconds are a do-or-die moment. The visual sequence has to be tightly compressed.
But it still needs the DNA.
Exactly. But even at that high speed, it still needs to feel like it booted up from the exact same operating system. It's your brand in quick strike mode, But quick strike mode does not mean chaos mode. You can be fast without being frantic.
So if we pull back and look at all four of these deliverables lined up on a desk, the marketing reel, the training module, the technical inspection, the fast social clip, they're not identical clones.
No, they look different.
They don't look exactly the same, but they're unmistakable relatives. They share a deep family resemblance.
Family resemblance, exactly.
They operate on the same visual values, they share the same emotional center of gravity, and they exhibit the same underlying discipline. They're just wearing entirely different uniforms because they have entirely different jobs to do that day.
If we accept that this family resemblance is the goal, the immediate operational question becomes, how do we do it? How do we actually synthesize that DNA? How do we build a visual language that holds up across all those different environments?
Where do we start?
The very first thing we have to do is stop treating our aesthetic choices, specifically color, composition, and editing, as if they are three separate, isolated artistic preferences.
Because they're connected.
They aren't isolated. They are a highly coordinated, interlocking perception system.
Let's break those three pillars down because the mechanics here are fascinating. We start with layer one, which is color behavior.
This is so important.
The playbook is adamant that color is not just about picking a hue that you think looks pretty. It's an act of emotional positioning. It's entirely about temperature and trust.
Yes.
The sources map out four primary color directions that brands usually fall into. First, you have clean and natural.
Which is very objective.
Right. This is color that simply tries to replicate human eyesight. It looks truthful, it looks mature, and it feels highly objective. Then you have bold and cinematic.
The movie look.
This is heavy contrast, rich teal skies, warm orange skin tones. It's incredibly dramatic and aspirational. But in a highly technical field, it can almost instantly feel try-hard, or worse, manipulative.
If you are selling commercial insurance or aerospace engineering, bold and cinematic often signals that you are hiding something behind the gloss.
Like compensating for something.
Exactly. The third direction is crisp and technical. This approach heavily favors clean, pure whites, a cool to neutral color balance, and highly legible, sharp edges.
It feels like engineering.
It feels systematic. It feels relentlessly reliable and engineering friendly. This is exactly where a brand like Sky Commander needs to plant its flag.
And the fourth one.
And finally, you have warm and inviting. This palette utilizes golden sunset tones, lifted shadows, and softer overall contrast.
That was cozy.
It is designed to feel highly approachable. It is an absolute powerhouse for industries like luxury real estate, high-end hospitality, or wellness.
But not for infrastructure.
No. If you apply warm and inviting to an industrial pipeline inspection, you fatally soften the seriousness of the data. The pipeline looks nostalgic instead of secure.
Nostalgic pipelines. Not what you want.
Definitely not.
The documentation actually outlines Sky Commander's specific guardrails for their palette, and the intentionality is staggering.
They are very precise.
They don't just say, we use blue. They anchor the brand on very specific, deeply psychological tones. Flightline blue, Commander navy, slate gray, sky mist, and a pure, unpolluted white.
Those are load-bearing tones.
Those are the core load-bearing tones that project trust. And then they introduce safety yellow and afterburner orange strictly as accents.
Just for highlights.
Not as dominant background wallpapers, but as highly functional highlights to direct the viewer's eye to critical data points.
The distinction there is having brand colors versus having color behavior.
What's the difference?
Having brand colors means you know what hex code your logo is. Having color behavior means you have defined how the image is allowed to act under varying real-world conditions.
Oh, I see.
When the drone flies into a dark area, should the shadows be crushed and moody or lifted and open so we can see the details?
That's the behavior.
When filming outdoors, should the skies look like a natural, pale Tuesday afternoon? Or should they be over-dramatized into a deep, stormy teal?
You have to know beforehand.
A premium brand doesn't guess the answers to these questions in the editing room. The answers are already governed.
Layer 2 is composition. I absolutely love how the text frames this.
It's a great perspective.
It states that composition isn't decoration. It's how you teach the audience what matters. It is an act of visual leadership.
Visual leadership.
You are literally grabbing the viewer by a hand and telling them where to look. And there is one specific, incredibly subtle tell that separates an amateur operator from a seasoned professional.
Horizon control.
Horizon control, yes.
Horizon control is deeply, almost primal in its psychological impact. Think about how the human inner ear works. We are biologically wired to desire a stable horizon.
It's a physical need.
When a viewer watches a video where the horizon line is wandering, slightly tilted, or constantly dipping, it quietly signals to their subconscious that something is wrong.
It makes you feel seasick.
It communicates a lack of care, a lack of operational discipline, or a lack of time. It feels physically unstable.
Right.
On the other hand, a perfectly level, rigidly stable horizon equals a stable operator. And a stable operator equals a safer, more predictable brand. A safer brand commands higher trust and higher prices. It is a direct, unbreakable psychological chain.
And the movement of the camera itself acts as the brand's body language.
Yes.
If the camera is frantic, constantly yawing left and right, panning too quickly, suddenly speed ramping, the brand physically feels restless, anxious, and inexperienced.
Like they're rushing.
But if the movement is calm, measured, deliberate, and slowly reveals the subject, the brand feels deeply confident. It's projecting quiet authority without saying a word.
It leads right into the next layer.
Which naturally pulls us into layer 3. Yeah. Editing. The playbook calls this the behavioral proof.
This is where it all comes together.
This is the moment where the audience subconsciously decides if you are actually in control of your material, or if the material is in control of you.
Editing is the process where invisible order becomes visible to the client. Let's examine the mechanics of transition.
Okay, transitions.
When an amateur editor gets their hands on a new piece of software, they tend to use flashy, highly complex transitions, whip pans, digital zooms, light leaks, glitch effects.
Because it's a new toy.
Why? Because they are trying to say to the viewer, look what I can do, look how much software I know how to use.
Right. It's about them.
The transition pulls the viewer's attention away from the subject and violently yanks it toward the editor's ego.
Wow, violently yanks it.
A premium, mature brand uses hard, perfectly timed clean cuts or incredibly subtle dissolves. The message there is entirely different. It says, this sequence flows inevitably from one truth to the next. The attention never leaves the subject.
The concept of pacing plays right into that too. You can always spot a scared editor because they cut way too fast.
They're terrified of losing you.
Right. They have this baseline terror that the audience is going to get bored and click away, so they rush through every single shot, never letting the eye settle.
But a confident editor.
A confident editor lets a strong, beautiful shot breathe. They trust the quality of the material. When layer 1, 2, and 3 color, composition, and editing all align, the brand feels what the playbook calls steady.
Steady?
It feels intentional, governed, and finished. When those 3 layers are fighting each other, like warm colors but frantic editing and crooked horizons, the brand feels scattered. It feels busy, uncertain, and fundamentally amateur.
So we've established what these 3 pillars look like when they function perfectly. The inevitable question is...
So why do people mess it up?
Exactly. If the rules are this clear, why do so many highly talented, technically proficient, deeply experienced operators still put out work that looks scattered and amateur?
Why is it so common?
It almost always boils down to a phenomenon called decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
The playbook outlines 10 specific traps. These are micro-decision mistakes made at the end of a long day that completely sabotage a brand's visual identity and cause a slow, creeping disease we call brand drift.
I want to spend some real time on these traps because they are so insidious.
They really sneak up on you.
We're going to group them logically so we can see the underlying patterns. Let's start with what I would call the ego traps.
Okay.
Trap 1 is over-editing. The text refers to this as visual inflation. This happens when you are trying so hard to prove your technical skill that you forget your actual job is to guide the viewer's perception.
You're showing off.
So you push the color contrast way too hard, you stack 3 different transitions on top of each other, you add a hyperactive, thumping music track to a video about a concrete bridge, it completely backfires.
Completely.
Instead of looking skilled, a highly technical company suddenly looks trend-obsessed and desperate for attention.
Over-editing is almost always a symptom of insecurity. You don't trust the raw value of the footage, so you try to dress it up.
Makes sense.
Another major ego trap is trap 6, branding too loudly.
Oh, this one is rough.
The playbook calls this visual graffiti. When a business owner first discovers the concept of branding, they tend to severely overcompensate.
They want their name everywhere.
They are so proud of their logo that they drop a giant 50% opacity watermark right across the dead center of the screen. They plaster their logo in all 4 corners of the video. They put a massive 10-second animated logo sting at the front of a 30-second clip.
I've seen that exact thing. You click on a video to see the drone footage of a new stadium, and you have to sit through a 15-second spinning 3D logo of the drone company first, I instantly click away.
Exactly. It's an interruption. Premium brands understand they do not need to scream their identity in every single frame.
They let the work speak.
They let the underlying structure, the tone, the horizon control, and the sheer quality of the work carry the recognition. A Rolex doesn't need to flash neon lights to tell you it's a Rolex. The sweep of the second hand tells you.
That's a great comparison. The final ego trap is trap 10, and it might be my favorite concept in the entire stack of sources. Confusing taste with consistency.
This is profound.
Having great taste means that on your best day, when you have unlimited time, you can produce one single, excellent, isolated piece of visual content, and you will get applause for it.
But that's just one day.
But consistency means you have built a system capable of producing a recognizable, reliable body of work over 3, 5, or 10 years. Taste gets applause. Consistency builds equity.
Let's move to the second group, which we can call the inconsistency traps. These are the silent killers of trust.
What's the first one there?
Look at trap 2, inconsistent color. This is a massive issue. Imagine a client receives 4 videos from an operator over a month.
Okay.
Video 1 is warm and golden. Video 2 is cold, blue, and clinical. Video 3 is highly saturated and vibrant.
That sounds like 3 different companies.
The operator is color grading the footage based on how much sleep they got the night before or what mood they are in, rather than aiming at a stable, documented brand target.
And what does the client think?
When a corporate client looks at that scattered output, they don't consciously think, this vendor lacks a rigorous color pipeline. What they actually feel in their gut is, these people are unpredictable, they do not have a stable finishing standard, and unpredictability is the enemy of B2B sales.
That perfectly sets up trap 3, random fonts. Yeah. This is the ultimate, looks small, hurts big mistake. I used to do this before I knew better.
We all did.
I'd use a bold, futuristic font for the title, a classy serif font for the lower thirds, and a handwriting font for the closing slide.
Oh, wow.
The science behind why this is terrible is actually fascinating. Every time you introduce a new font, you force the viewer's brain to subconsciously relearn how to read the shapes of the letters. It causes microcognitive fatigue.
It tires them out.
Using 3 different novelty fonts in one video makes a company feel incredibly improvisational, cheap, and messy. Sky Commander solves this by building a walled garden.
Just a few options.
They strictly rely on Sego UI, Sentry Gothic, and Calibri. That's it. 3 fonts forever. It's a closed, highly efficient system.
And that cognitive fatigue applies to time as well, which is trap 4, mismatched pacing.
How so?
If one project cuts like a hyperactive action movie trailer and the very next project drifts along like a slow, ambient art house film, the brand feels emotionally unstable.
Emotionally unstable.
There is no consistent rhythm or heartbeat for the audience's brain to lock onto and feel safe with.
We also have to talk about trap 5. Disconnected packaging. You might have shot the most beautiful, level, perfectly graded footage in the world.
But the packaging matters.
But if your deliverables have different logos, the watermarks bounce around to different corners depending on the video. Your YouTube thumbnails are a random assortment of styles, and some videos are exported in widescreen while others are vertical. You do not look like a cohesive company.
You look like a collective.
You look like a loose collective of random freelancers. And buyers don't just judge the content. They judge if the company looks repeatable.
Which brings us to the third and final group, the context traps. These occur when you lose sight of the environment you are operating in.
Trap 9.
Trap 9 is no documented standards. If your brand's visual style only exists inside the head of your lead editor, it is not a system. It is simply a personal preference.
And preferences change.
And human preferences collapse the moment the editor gets tired, or the moment they get sick and you have to outsource the editing to a contractor, or when a client deadline gets moved up by 48 hours. Standards are designed to survive fatigue. Preferences are not.
Trap 8 is service line infection. I've seen this destroy pitches.
It's so common.
This is when an operator finds a visual look that works flawlessly for one very specific service line. Let's say they figured out how to shoot sweeping, slow-motion, golden hour shots for luxury real estate clients. It looks amazing.
But then they get lazy.
They take that exact same aesthetic and apply it to a completely different service line. Suddenly, they are delivering a highly technical bridge inspection using a romantic, luxury real estate aesthetic.
It's completely inappropriate.
It's a total mismatch of purpose that makes the client question if the operator actually understands engineering.
But the most dangerous context trap of all so dangerous that it requires its own dedicated analysis is trap 7, trend chasing.
Trend chasing.
Let's use a mechanical metaphor. Think of your brand as a cargo ship crossing the Pacific Ocean. Your visual identity is your compass heading.
Okay, I'm following.
Trend chasing is when you look at a viral edit style on TikTok or a flashy new transition on Instagram, and you adjust your heading by just 1 single degree to chase that trend.
1 degree doesn't seem like much.
You don't notice the difference that day, but a year later, you have experienced total brand drift. You are in the completely wrong ocean, completely disconnected from your original destination.
The text expands on this in a section about the danger of the blind copy and the creator trap. Why is it that copying a famous, multi-million follower Instagram creator style can completely ruin a technical B2B business?
It's the illusion of the shortcut.
It is so deeply tempting. You see a creator with 2 million views on a drone video and your exhausted brain says, "Thank God they already solved the math. I will just download their template and use their exact formula."
But the fundamental error is that you are only copying the result.
Just the surface.
You are only copying the thin, visible surface. You aren't seeing the invisible ecosystem that produced it.
What are we missing?
You aren't seeing the specific constraints they were working under, the audience demographics they were targeting, or the strategic commercial goals that justified that specific look in the first place.
Our sources identify what they call the 7 mismatches of blind copying. If you copy a creator's style without understanding the underlying context, you will trigger at least one of these massive failures.
Let's walk through them.
The first is mission mismatch. Imagine copying a viral tourism reel. It's designed to induce awe, wanderlust, and deep emotion. Now imagine pasting that exact awe-inspiring aesthetic onto a utility corridor inspection. The municipal client looking at that power line does not want to feel awe. They want clear empirical evidence of corrosion. You failed the mission.
The second is client mismatch. Different buyers speak different visual languages.
Give me an example.
A luxury real estate broker selling a waterfront mansion wants aspiration, lifestyle, and warmth. A municipal infrastructure team managing taxpayer dollars wants sober, metric-driven, unemotional confidence.
So if you mix them up?
If you give the infrastructure team the luxury real estate treatment, they will assume you are unserious and probably overcharging them.
Yikes.
The third mismatch is workflow mismatch, and this one destroys profit margins.
How does that happen?
Let's say you buy a creator's editing course. You copy a cinematic look that requires perfect, controlled lighting, custom sound design layering, and 10 hours of meticulous color masking in post-production.
That sounds expensive.
But your actual operational reality is a tight deadline mixed weather utility shoot that you are contractually obligated to deliver in 24 hours. The style completely collapses because your real-world workflow simply cannot support the fantasy.
And closely related to that is condition mismatch. I want to explain how this actually works technically for you listening. A lot of people buy something called a LUT lookup table from their favorite creator.
Very common.
LUT is basically a complex math equation for color grading. It maps the colors from your camera to a new set of colors. If a creator built that math equation to make the harsh, high-contrast sun of the California desert look incredibly rich and cinematic, it works great in California.
Oh, if you take it somewhere else.
But if you take that exact same math equation and apply it to footage shot in the flat, gray, muddy, overcast light of an Alberta winter, the math completely breaks. The footage doesn't look cinematic, it looks dead, artificial, and depressing. You cannot paste a sunny aesthetic over a freezing reality.
Exactly. You also face subject mismatch and platform mismatch.
Which is...
This is applying hyper-fast, thumb-stopping, vertical editing tricks things designed for a teenager on a smartphone to a horizontal 15-minute boardroom proposal deck being projected onto a 120-inch screen for executives.
It's just jarring.
It is entirely the wrong room, the wrong screen, and the wrong audience for that chaotic energy.
Which all culminates in the 7th and most tragic mismatch, identity mismatch. Let's go back to Sky Commander. Their brand identity is built on projecting quiet confidence, precision, and actionable intelligence.
Right.
If they blindly copy a flashy, ego-driven, hyperkinetic creator style, they literally turn into someone else. They're wearing someone else's face. They betray their own core promise to the market.
So how do we fix this? What is the professional pivot?
Yeah, what's the alternative?
The rule is simple. Amateurs copy surfaces, professionals extract principles.
Extract principles.
Instead of looking at a viral video and asking, how do I download this creator's exact color grade and transition pack? A professional asks, what underlying psychological principle is making this creator's video so effective?
That's a huge shift in mindset.
Maybe you analyze it and realize the principle is clear subject hierarchy or highly confident pacing. You can absolutely apply the principle of confident pacing to a technical bridge inspection without copying the hype beast neon aesthetic.
Right.
Professionals shoot to serve the edit, and they edit to serve the client. They do not edit to serve their own ego.
We've spent a lot of time talking about aesthetic ambition, psychological framing, and visual style. But we have to hit a hard wall right now. We have to introduce a massive reality check.
The legal side.
Because we can debate color temperature and horizon lines all day long, but you absolutely cannot build a reliable, repeatable visual standard if the physical drone maneuvers required to capture those shots are literally illegal.
No, you cannot.
This isn't just theory. This is the hard operational boundary of your brand.
This is where the abstract art of branding violently collides with hard regulatory reality. The playbook introduces a framework called the look test.
The look test.
Every single creative choice you make must pass the look test. Legible, ownable, operable, keepable. We need to focus intensely on operable.
What does operable mean here?
If your signature visual style, the thing that defines your brand, requires you to fly dangerously, fly beyond visual line of sight without a waiver, or fly illegally over crowds, it fails the operable test.
It's a house of cards.
It is a fragile, doomed brand built on a house of cards. The moment you are audited or reported, your entire visual identity is grounded.
Let's actually dig into the mechanisms of the regulatory frameworks because they strictly dictate what is legally operable, and it varies wildly depending on where you are.
Extremely wildly.
So let's look at Canada and the U.S. In Canada, drone operations, which Transport Canada refers to as RPAS, or remotely piloted aircraft systems, are heavily category-driven. You essentially have basic operations, which you can do if you're 14 or older, advanced operations, and level 1 complex operations.
And here is a critical operational reality check that the sources highlight, which catches a lot of people off guard.
The microdrone thing.
Yes. There's a rampant misconception among operators that if they buy a sub-250-gram microdrone, they exist in this magical, unregulated loophole where the laws of aviation no longer apply to them. They think microdrone means do whatever I want.
But that's not true.
But Transport Canada is aggressively closing that perception gap. As of April 1st, 2025, the regulations mandate that flying any drone, explicitly including sub-250-gram microdrones, at an advertised event requires a Special Flight Operations Certificate, or SFOC.
And getting an SFOC isn't just filling out a web form in 5 minutes. It's a rigorous, documented process that proves your operational safety case, and it takes time.
Exactly.
So if your entire brand signature look relies on spontaneously flying a microdrone low over concert crowds or festival audiences without filing paperwork, your brand style is legally dead in the water in Canada.
Now, contrast that regulatory architecture with the United States. In the U.S., commercial operations fall under the FAA's SUAS Part 107 rules. The framework is completely different. First, you must be at least 16 years old to hold the certificate. Second, it is not a take the test once and you are a pilot forever scenario. The FAA requires recurrent training every 24 calendar months to prove your aeronautical knowledge remains current.
Okay.
Furthermore, the U.S. relies heavily on remote ID, which acts as a continuous digital license plate broadcasting the drone's location and the pilot's control station location to anyone on the ground with a smartphone.
And the mechanism for airspace authorization is completely different. In the U.S., if you need to fly in controlled airspace, say, near an airport, you don't wait weeks for a paper certificate. You use the LANC system.
LANC? Yes.
LANC stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. It is essentially an automated digital toll booth that instantly pings air traffic control and grants you near real-time permission via an app, provided you are under the grid altitude limits.
But there are still limits.
But if your brand style requires flying at night or flying directly over unprotected people, there are highly specific, strict compliance pathways and equipment requirements you must meet. You cannot just adopt what the playbook calls a waiver mentality, this arrogant assumption that you'll easily get a federal exception just because you consider yourself an artist.
The playbook provides a brilliant scenario to illustrate how this impacts branding. Imagine a multinational corporate client wants you to shoot a seamless, highly unified brand campaign across two of their facilities, one in Alberta, Canada, and one in Montana, USA.
Okay, cross-border.
The client demands that the visual style, the color grade, the camera movement, and the pacing look completely identical on screen. The final video must be a seamless cut.
But behind the scenes,
But as the operator, you know that the compliance paperwork, the airspace authorization mechanisms, the legal standoff distances, and the regulatory framework operating invisibly behind the camera will be completely different for each location. A mature brand operator does not gamble their business on loophole energy. They know how to produce identical, compliant visual output across entirely different legal systems.
so if we know the traps we have to avoid, we understand the psychology of the three pillars, and we are fiercely aware of the legal boundaries, how do we actually operationalize all of this?
That's the big question.
How do we build a machine that ensures we don't suffer from crippling decision fatigue every single time we sit down at the editing desk? We need an algorithm for human decision-making.
Which brings us to the construction of a practical 10-point style guide. And we need to clarify what a style guide actually is in this context.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because a style guide, as defined by this playbook, should absolutely not be a 150-page bloated corporate PDF that gets buried in a Google Drive folder and never read again.
Nobody reads those.
No one. It needs to be a living, breathing, one-page, field-usable document. It is a decision shortcut. It exists solely to prevent you from having to relitigate and redecide your entire brand identity at 2 a.m. when you are exhausted and trying to render a video.
So let's walk through the 10 core sections you actually need to build this machine.
Okay, hit me. Section 1.
Section 1 is the soul, brand feeling. You limit this to just 3 to 5 words. For Sky Commander, it's clear, credible, and calm. Every single other decision cascades from those 3 words.
And section 2 is the core promise. Ask yourself, what is this specific piece of work supposed to make the viewer inherently believe about our company? For Sky Commander, the documented promise is we turn raw aerial visuals into trustworthy, actionable insight. If an edit doesn't serve that promise, the edit is rejected.
Section 3 moves into the visual rules, color behavior. And notice, this is not just a list of hex codes for the graphic designer. These are behavioral rules for the editor. Skies should remain natural and never be over-dramatized into deep teal. Whites should be balanced, perfectly clean, never leaning artificially warm or cool. You are drawing the borders of your visual world.
Section 4 is typography rules. You keep this brutally, ruthlessly simple. You define one primary font for titles, one secondary font for body text or lower thirds, and you explicitly ban all novelty fonts. Sky Commander uses Seago UI for its structural clarity.
Simple and clean.
Exactly. Section 5 is logo and mark usage. This defines the hierarchy of your identity. When is it appropriate to use the full spelled-out text logo versus just the standalone icon glyph? How subtle in terms of opacity should the corner watermark be?
Section 6 is the execution, shot behavior. How does the camera normally act in your world? You write down the laws of physics for your brand.
The laws of physics.
Horizons must remain absolutely level at all times. Wide context must always be established before zooming into tight detail. Camera movement is always deliberate and slow.
In Section 7.
Section 7 is editing rhythm. You give the editor psychological guardrails. Transitions must be restrained to hard cuts or simple dissolves. Let structurally strong shots breathe for at least 4 seconds.
Section 8 is graphics and overlays. What is the internal logic for your on-screen data? When you highlight a cracked pipe, do you use a clean, thin-lined bounding box, or do you use heavy text with a drop shadow? Decide once and never decide again.
It saves so much time.
Section 9 is content mode rules. This ties directly back to our 4 mission modes. You document exactly how the core brand is allowed to flex and adapt when it switches from the high-energy marketing reel down into the purely analytical inspection summary.
And finally, Section 10, the shield, the never-do list. Honestly, this might be the single most valuable quadrant of the entire document.
The never-do list.
This is what protects the brand from you when you are tired, caffeinated, and rushing a deadline. We never crush blacks to create fake drama. We never use random, unapproved fonts. We never place oversized watermarks over the subject.
It's a safety net.
A well-built style guide does not restrict your creativity. It liberates it. It prevents your creativity from devolving into randomness.
The ultimate question then is why? Why do we go through all this meticulous effort? Why map out the color behavior, level the horizons, respect the cognitive load of the viewer, navigate the regulatory labyrinth, and build this 10-point machine?
Because visual consistency is not an exercise in aesthetics. It is an exercise in business leverage. It fundamentally changes the underlying economics of your operation.
Let's track the actual math on this, the economics of trust. This is a literal psychological equation. Consistent visual style creates a profound sense of familiarity.
Right.
When a client sees a familiar, predictable, highly governed pattern over and over again, it drastically reduces their subconscious uncertainty about you. Lower uncertainty automatically, mathematically increases trust.
And trust converts.
That elevated trust dramatically improves your conversion rates during pitch meetings. Better conversion rates mean you start attracting higher quality, more serious, better funded clients. And those higher quality clients are entirely happy to support premium pricing.
It is the concept of visible proof for invisible qualities. Think about a municipal director hiring a commercial drone operator for $1 million critical infrastructure inspection.
Okay.
That director cannot easily sit down and audit the pilot's precise micromillimeter stick skills on the controller. They probably don't understand the complex technical sensor knowledge required to operate a thermal payload.
So how do they judge?
They are forced to evaluate the signals surrounding the work. If your visual output, your reports, your videos, your website is rigorously governed, coherent, level, and highly consistent, the client's brain subconsciously infers that your underlying invisible business processes are equally governed, rigorous, and reliable.
You are signaling a massive reduction in oversight burden. They look at your beautifully restrained, perfectly formatted work, and they think, thank God. I am not going to have to babysit this vendor. I am not going to have to apologize to my boss for the chaotic formatting of their safety reports. You are literally selling them a reduction in their own reputational risk.
And here is where the leverage becomes exponential. The value compounds. This is the difference between a freelancer and an agency.
Compounding value.
Inconsistent trend-chasing projects are just isolated flashes in the pan. They might solve today's cash flow problem, but they build zero long-term brand equity. But highly consistent projects compound on each other like interest in a bank account.
So each one makes the other stronger.
When you release a new, perfectly on-brand, crisp social clip, it retroactively strengthens the perceived value of the sales deck you sent out yesterday. It pre-sells the client. You find yourself spending drastically less time in a pitch meeting desperately trying to explain who you are or why you charge so much because the visual system has already done all the heavy lifting before you even walked in the room.
Which brings us to the ultimate thesis. Premium is restraint. We have to hammer that concept home. Premium does not mean the most expensive, flashy transitions, the most saturated colors, or the loudest, most epic music.
No, not at all.
Premium means providing quiet, undeniable, visible evidence that someone cared enough to make hundreds of repeated, tiny decisions line up perfectly, over and over and over again. Control feels premium. Clarity feels premium.
If we look back at the expansive journey of this deep dive, the architecture of building a premium technical brand is remarkably, beautifully logical.
It really is.
We've learned that consistency is entirely about establishing a deep family resemblance, not turning out mindless, identical clones. It relies on mastering the 3 coordinated pillars of color temperature, horizon composition, and editing restraint.
And avoiding the traps.
It requires extreme daily vigilance against the creeping traps of ego-driven over-editing, algorithmic trend-chasing, and blindly copying creators without understanding the mechanical workflow behind their aesthetics.
It demands a sober, professional understanding of the legal and operational realities, knowing that you simply cannot base a visual brand on maneuvers that violate RPAS mandates in Canada or Part 107 regulations and LANC protocols in the US.
You have to know the rules.
And it all culminates in taking an hour to build a practical, field-tested, 10-point style guide, an algorithm for decision-making that turns your aesthetic choices into tangible hard business leverage, drastically lower buyer friction, and supreme pricing power.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought, looking toward the very near future. We are entering an era where AI video generation is making perfect, glossy visuals incredibly cheap and instantaneous.
Right. Anyone can do it now.
Soon, anyone will be able to type a prompt and generate a cinematic, perfectly graded video of a drone flying over a bridge. When perfect aesthetics become a commodity that costs $0, how will a client know who to trust?
That's a scary thought.
How do you prove you are a real, highly competent human operator? The answer is that the only remaining proof of human authenticity and operational reality will be your meticulously documented consistency, your adherence to actual physics, and your legal, verifiable compliance. AI can fake a sunset. It cannot fake a governed, reliable, legally compliant business system.
That is the ultimate crucible. When the digital tools can fake everything else, your discipline is the only thing left that proves you are real. Can your clients feel the heavy, muffled click of the oak door without ever having to see the hotel sign?
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.